Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, thank you so much for the invitation to come here today. And Tori, Nick, and Alan, thank you for this wonderful welcome. It is indeed an honor for me to be here in Atlanta today to talk with so many distinguished delegates here about climate change and Denmark's decision to become a green growth economy. I'm very proud to represent my home country, Denmark, and the Danish government, which along the way has taken some very courageous steps and decisions, and I'm sure they have been quite difficult as well, in the area of renewable energy and green growth. And I do have to warn you up front that I will not be using slides. I know that this morning I was met with a shock when I said, no slides. I said, no, you just have to listen carefully instead. So let me start by saying that the southeastern US and Denmark, we are worlds apart in more senses than one. An ocean divides us, and the state of Georgia alone is more than 3 times the size of Denmark. And let us not forget that Denmark, for the most part, is cold and wet, while the weather here usually is hot and humid. I know what I like the best, so I think I'm the right place here today. But one important thing we have in common, however, is the consequences we each experience as a result of climate change. According to the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, 2012 saw both the warmest and the second most extreme weather ever recorded in the United States. Last year, we witnessed a historic drought and an above-average number of wildfires, multiple freak storms that left millions without power, as well as several heat waves. Although the climate in Denmark is different, we are experiencing many of the same changes. As you may know, the Kingdom of Denmark covers a vast area that includes the Faroe Islands and Greenland. In Greenland, the ice cap is melting at a rapid rate, and in the Faroe Islands, fish stocks are in decline. And Copenhagen has seen damage from unusually heavy rainfall in recent years. These extreme weather patterns that we are seeing both in the United States and in other parts of the world are, or should be, a wake-up call to all of us. Something needs to change. And I'm here today to talk with you about what Denmark is doing to combat the challenges before us. As the first country in the world, we have decided to become a green growth economy. By 2050, we will be entirely independent of coal and oil and gas, and we will have reduced our greenhouse gas emission significantly. The road to fossil fuel independence by 2050 will not be easy and will require large investments. So I'm not here to tell you that it will be a free lunch. But all told, the transition to low-carbon economy will be relatively inexpensive, in part because in the future we will no longer be at the mercy of rising prices on the global market for fossil fuels. The Danish government's fossil-free strategy for 2050 is fully financed, and it shows that the transition can be made without damaging our competitiveness. We do expect consumers to see moderate increases in the price of heat and electricity, admittedly from an already high level. But these additional costs must be compared to the projected rise in the future cost of fossil fuels. Ultimately, renewables are in the long run renewable. But let me give you a bit of a background for why Denmark is where we are today and why we can call ourselves a green economy, because somehow we learned it the hard way. The Danish ambition to be fossil-free dates back almost 40 years. Before the oil crisis of the 1970s, Denmark was completely dependent on foreign oil. When the oil crisis hit in the 1973 or around that time, Denmark felt the full brunt of it. There was a shortage of oil, and for a while, no cars were allowed to drive on Sundays. I still remember those days. They were actually quite fun. But I still remember that the government, as a result, decided to pursue a new strategy to meet our growing energy needs, while also at the same time accommodating important environmental concerns. Energy prices went up, and the government decided on very ambitious targets for renewable energy. And at the same time, the government established incentives for private households and businesses to, for instance, insulate buildings, to change windows for modern double-glazed windows, etc. So a number of initiatives were started. So the oil crisis, you can say, was a clear wake-up call for the Danish population and for the Danish government. And there was this agreement that never again would we like to be in the same situation, being dependent on oil from other countries. So after the oil crisis, we kept the energy prices high, and we began to develop a new industry based on sustainable energy solutions. And in addition, we started to emphasize ways to save energy, so energy efficiency. If you take a state like South Carolina, for example, which has roughly the same population as Denmark, around 5 million, 5.5, you can see that the yearly energy consumption in South Carolina is almost 3 times that of Denmark. And the reason for Denmark's relatively low energy consumption is to a large extent energy efficiency. Our energy efficiency effort have been so successful that we are now ranked as the most energy efficient country in the EU. So since the 1970s, green issues such as energy efficiency, renewables, waste and resource management, clean air, water and sustainable cities have become deeply embedded in the mindset of the Danes. And time has shown that economic and environmental policies can indeed go hand in hand. And now actually I should have brought with me one slide for the projector, but try to imagine that since 1980, the Danish economy has grown by almost 80%, so you see the line going up this way, while at the same time our energy consumption has remained constant. We make a line there, and the CO2 emission have been reduced. So I think that, if you can see it for you, speaks for itself. During this time, Denmark has grown to become a global leader in the development of new sustainable technologies and solutions. In order to reach the goal of becoming fossil-free by 2050, the implementation of these technologies is key. So how do we plan the implementation of these technologies? In the spring of 2012, with broad bipartisan support in the Danish parliament, a new energy agreement was adopted. So in the budget for 2013, $480 million have been earmarked for the implementation of the energy agreement. And an additional $102 million have been earmarked for research in the energy systems of the future. The energy agreement stipulates that by 2020, Denmark will reduce its greenhouse gas emissions by 40% compared to 1990 levels, and 34% of these reductions will be reached through the implementation of the energy agreement. And the remaining 6% will be reduced through new initiatives in transportation, agriculture, and building. These initiatives are all part of a new climate plan, which the Danish government will release within the next few weeks. And the climate plan will lead to a new Climate Change Act to be adopted by the Danish Parliament in the spring of 2013. But when Denmark only accounts for about 0.2% of the total global greenhouse gas emission, does it even make sense for us to lead the way? And the answer is a clear yes. First, all countries have to contribute. With the commitments that various countries have made so far, we will not be able to ensure that we will stay below the 2 degrees Celsius targets that have been set by the United Nations. In other words, we need more countries to act. Second, our targets are pushing the development of necessary technologies to set not only Denmark, but other countries as well on the path to a low-carbon economy. And since the 1970s and the push for new policies, Danish companies have found a global competitive advantage in being energy efficient. Today, the export of technologies in energy and environmental technologies accounts for 18% of our total export, and the potential is even bigger. Relatively speaking, Denmark is the biggest exporter of energy and environmental technologies in the EU. And during the financial crisis, Danish exports of sustainable energy products have remained healthy. So Danish companies are also spending vast sums of money here in the United States by investing in renewable sectors such as wind, solar, and green buildings. And these companies are helping to create well-paying American jobs. But it's also by thinking in alternative solutions, and let me here come with an example. In the US, here for example, water and energy nexus is an area which is not always looked into details, and large amounts of the energy consumption in the US goes to meeting the growing demand for clean water. And then we have one of the leading Danish pump manufacturers, Grundfos, which employs 4,000 American workers across the US. They had for decades been focusing on designing and developing pumps with a very low energy consumption. So it is important that we think across the various energy sectors when finding a joint approach to reducing our energy consumption. So what are the sustainable solutions that we rely on to become fossil-free? Unlike our northern neighbors in Norway and Sweden, we don't have great expanses of forest and hydropower from the water running off the mountains. And that has one clear reason, and that is we have no mountains in Denmark. And unlike California, for example, we don't have a lot of sun. In fact, we only have 6 hours of daylight in the wintertime. So, and we never wanted to use nuclear power in Denmark. Here in the southeast, you have a resource that is plentiful, which is biomass. Biomass is a great renewable energy source, and during the past 3 decades, the production of biomass has been quadrupled in Denmark. And today, the main part of our renewable energy consumption comes from biomass. Conversion from coal to biomass at large scale, combined heat and power plants, is made attractive by allowing producers and consumers to make price agreements. And in the long run, biomass will also be a vital element in flexible electricity production and for the transportation sector. Promoting biomass and biogas as alternatives to fossil fuels is also crucial for reducing the greenhouse gas emission from agriculture. Currently, agriculture accounts for 16% of total greenhouse gas emission in the sectors not covered by the EU emissions trading system. Because biogas and biomass from straw can cost-effectively outphase coal and natural gas, the agricultural sector plays a key role in reaching my government's target of reducing greenhouse gas emission by 40% compared to 1990 levels in 2020. Altogether, it is our goal that more than 35% of final energy consumption will come from renewable energy sources in 2020. However, no single technology will ever by itself be enough. Another key component in the 2050 mission to become fossil-free is wind. One of the world's largest wind turbine manufacturers is a Danish company called Vestas. Today, 28% of the Danish electricity consumption is covered by wind energy. 28%, that's quite a high figure. And a number which we plan to raise to 50% by 2020. In order to reach that goal, my government is investing heavily in offshore wind farms. 1,000 megawatt offshore wind turbines are under construction in the North and Baltic Seas, and a number of 500 megawatt offshore wind turbines are added in coastal areas. Not only Denmark, but also the EU has committed to transforming Europe into a highly energy-efficient, low-carbon economy. And the EU plans to raise the share of energy consumption produced from renewable resources to 20% in 2020. So wind energy plays an important role in reaching this target. In the coming 7 to 8 years, the countries around the North Sea, the UK, Germany, the Netherlands, and Denmark will be installing offshore wind turbines with a total effect of 40,000 megawatt. But it's not only where we get the energy from, it is also a question of how we get the energy to the end users. And just to come with a few concrete examples. One of our successes in Denmark has been the district energy model, realizing that this model is not 100% transferable to the US market and other markets on a utility scale, a district energy model can easily be adopted in many cases here in the region as well, such as large university campuses, army installations, hospitals, and the like. Today we have areas in Denmark heated with a combination of renewable energy sources such as biomass, biogas, solar thermal, and obviously wind. Currently, a Danish district energy model is being implemented, for instance, at Cornell University. So it's really about making it smarter and not harder, and Denmark is a leader of smart grid solutions. Over the past 2 years, our innovation center in Silicon Valley has been facilitating groups of Danes and Americans exchanging experiences across the pond around smart grid solutions. Currently, 5 different municipalities across the US are cooperating with one of the world's leading smart meter companies, the Danish company Kamstrup, on trials of their smart water meter solution. And a few weeks ago, Kamstrup opened their US headquarters at the Danish Trade Council's incubator here in Atlanta. And if you want to know more, I know that we're here today. We have the Danish Trade Commissioner, Carsten Rosendahl, from Atlanta present here. So at lunch, you can all go to him and ask questions in. So as I mentioned earlier, green issues such as energy efficiency, renewables, and green air are all a part of the Danish mindset. One great example of this is the Danes' favorite means of transportation, which is the bicycle. More than a third of the people of Copenhagen, including senior government officials and cabinet ministers, they ride on their bikes to work every day in rain, snow, sun. You can see the bicycles. We have thousands of miles of bike paths and designated bike lanes, and many people do not own a car and either bike or take public transportation, which has also been very well developed in Denmark. So if you visit Denmark during a normal rush hour morning, you will experience that we have a major problem with traffic jams, not on the roads, but on the bicycle lanes. So the bicycle-loving Danes serve as a great example of how a green transition can only be implemented if it has the support of the people. The green agenda is one of the few issues that has almost bipartisan support in the Danish parliament. And there is, in other words, broad agreement in Denmark that a green transition is needed, and that being a first mover on this issue will benefit both the environment and our economy in the long run. It really makes economic sense. The goals I have outlined here today, this morning, they are ambitious, but they are not unattainable and they are not unaffordable. And it is important to remember that we will, in the end, pay a steep price for inaction as well. So from my vantage point, reaching these goals is necessary for our long-term sustainability. It is important for our future economic growth, and it is vital for our world to prosper in the 21st century. Climate change is real, whether we decide to act or not, and time is not on our side. But if we act now, we can still control the process and take advantage of the many possibilities that transitioning to a green economy affords us. So let me conclude by congratulating the Southeastern Conference for taking up this very important topic of renewable energy, and I wish you all a very successful symposium in the days ahead. So, have a good day. Thank you very much.